Today, I want to pull back the veil on metrics and ye old engagement inside of your community and really talk about the numbers that matter, what metrics you need to be paying attention to, and of course, drop some gems along the way. So let's go ahead and get started. So often, community owners have a real lack of tangible information on how their community is performing, right? They might be leaving opportunities on the table, they might be measuring the wrong stuff. Worst case scenario, problems might emerge that they didn't see coming because often there's a lot of information coming at them in their analytics. There's no real context as to why it matters or how it's measured. Yeah. Alternatively, what would we really prefer, right? What is the goal of any metrics or analytics inside of our community? First of all, to get a really clear measure and community health check, right? We want to have valuable and actionable data that means something and we can do something about. We also want to make sure that we're getting the most value from our membership. And we want to free ourselves from worrying about the stuff that doesn't matter. And we also want to make sure, per the usual, that your community is a solution creating space and it's a growth machine for massive impact. These are all super essential, right? So there's a few key mistakes to avoid when you're diving into community measurements. One, not every metric matters, right? This is really about having clarity about what applies to your strategy and what doesn't, and ignoring the stuff that doesn't matter. Because let me tell you, there is a plethora of metrics out there that you can use to measure the health of your community, but not all of them apply to the way that you're running your community. Second, and this is kind of a doozy, is that organizations, businesses, you as the community leader want more engagement. Your members don't. I know. So focusing on engagement is actually a big mistake. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more specifically around engagement and what that means inside of a community, because that's often one of the first numbers that people go to when they look at the health of their community is like, are people showing up? Are people commenting? Are they engaged? And, oh my God, they're not engaged. What do I do? Let me run some challenge or let me create a bunch of value posts to try and re-engage my audience, and that's the wrong strategy. We'll dive into that more. And then another really big mistake that is often made here is that your community is lacking a clear positioning, right? And so if you don't have a clear positioning, do not pass go, do not collect $200, lock in your positioning and get that locked in first. So the core thing to remember here is that not every metric is for you. In this sesh, I'm going to cover a lot of different metrics and what they mean, but I want you to use your own strategy to determine which ones you're going to pay attention to and which ones you aren't. Your positioning statement defines the strategy of your community. Most community owners struggle with having a positioning statement that really packs a punch. So let's talk about what that looks like because I want to make sure that you have one of these for your community. Basically, there is a superlative, a verb, and the value that people get from your community. The fill in the blank place where these people go to get this sort of value. That might sound like the quickest place that new entrepreneurs can go to learn and get answers to their questions, right? You need this for your community because this positioning statement is what helps us know what to measure. In the first context, we have how you compete with others in the industry. Real talk, your community being a place for people to gather just isn't enough in today's times when every coach and their cousin is thinking about creating a community or has a private Facebook group or delivers the value for free, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to decide how you will compete with others. This is just a generic list of superlatives, but any old superlative here can work. The most cutting edge, the most exclusive, the cream of the crop, whatever you want your superlative to be, this is how you compete with everybody else, right? This is how you differentiate yourself from your competition. And then when it comes to what the activities and values that your community provides, this is where your users and your community research should really come into play. What is the purpose of your community? That's what these combinations are, right? Is it to help them get better ideas? Is it to help them make progress? Is it to help them forge connections, grow their business, make more money, whatever it may be? This often comes from your $1,000,000 messaging. But those two elements are absolutely essential in determining why people are going to keep coming to your community. A superlative sets you apart. Target audience lets them know they're in the right place. And the verb and the value is what your users want and what you promise. Let me move my little head out the way here so you can see the whole bees, right? If you're unclear on these two little bits here in the verb and the value, this is a great thing to create your favorite combinations and have your members tell you what they think and give you feedback as to why they're in the community, right? Because this really comes from them and the value that they provide. This comes from you and what sets you apart from everybody else. So far, so good. So your positioning statement defines the strategy of your community. Based on your positioning statement, now we have some idea of what metrics you need to measure. What are the metrics that are going to say, is this membership lining up with what I've promised? Is the membership doing its job? So if you've said that you are going to help people answer questions, then you want to measure whether or not people are asking questions and whether they're getting those questions answered and how fast they're getting those questions answered, right? Or if they're running into continual issues getting those questions answered. These are the areas by which you get to determine, okay, what is my strategy? And now what metrics will I choose to measure that strategy? Real talk, there are a lot of metrics out there. And so I'm going to show you the next screen that has a lot of different metrics that you can dive into. But I don't want you to look at this list and think you need to do all of them. This is just to give you a spectrum to consider when going, what of these metrics could you put into place that would help you know whether or not your community is living up to its promise or whether it's lining up and doing its job like you said it would, right? Let's start with community vibrance. Community vibrance is something that kind of just speaks to the liveliness and experience inside of your community. This is about how many members you have that are active. How do they feel about your community? Do they have a sense of community? Do they experience a sense of community? Is that community growing? Are people spending time on that platform? Are they coming back? And this is a really interesting one. Have they opted out of updates and alerts from that community, whether that be via email or via the platform? Then another one that's really important is about member advancement. We haven't dove into this quite a bit yet, but I want you to consider that your members aren't just moving along their journey of transformation inside of their community. They are at various levels of investment into your community. You may have super users, you may have ambassadors, you may have membership champions. And the way that you'll know that is by being able to measure it and give them uh, a return on investment for being a part of your community. We'll dive into this a little bit more as a talking point later. Are people becoming champions inside of the community? Are they championing your community outside of the community to other people? Are they super users? Are they in there and they're clicking and they're sharing and they're responding and part of your welcome committee? Are they participating in user engagement activities and to what level? You might have some people who show up to all the events. You might have other people who are really great at welcoming newbies. What activities are your members doing as they advance and become more engaged? And is there an experience of personalization? Do they feel special or do they feel like one number in a bunch? And do you have some sort of profiling mechanism in place so that you can see how your members are advancing over time? Really interesting things to think about. But again, yeah, we got a long list here. I don't want you feeling like these are all things you have to put in place. It's really about what metrics track your community strategy, right? And your community strategy is measured by your positioning statement. Okay. So then we have ye mighty engagement, right? This is activity by where they're coming from, event attendance, responses, responsiveness. Are there groups, subgroups, and various slices of your community? And how are those groups and subgroups performing? Are your members creating posts? Are they responding to posts? Most often, community creators get really caught up in engagement. And this is also a problem for community managers because this is where they're trying to prove the value of the community by using engagement metrics to demonstrate that there's value and impact. So, if more activity, more responses, more posts continue to go up, then the community manager can say, well, I'm doing my job by being a part of the community and managing it. When in reality, engagement's a really tricky metric. Again, we'll dive into that a little bit more later. Then there's content consumption. This is things like what are they watching and when are they watching it? Is content outside of your community sending people to your community? Or are people going to your community to get content? That's why they watch, right? We want to know why. When they watch, what they watch, how much of it, and how often. These are all analytics that you'll find, especially inside of course platforms and on YouTube channels that help you understand how your users are consuming content. And this can be really valuable for you when trying to choose what content is the most popular, what has the most value, what needs to be refreshed or updated or tossed out, right? If part of your positioning statement is to be the place with leading edge research, then you need to keep an eye on your content and determine what is really effective in helping people get results and what doesn't matter. For communities where customer support is part of their purpose, this is where you can measure like responsiveness, how long it takes for somebody to get a response when they post a question, and is it reducing the workload for your support team, right? Is your support team spending all their time answering dumb little questions, or are they focused on calls where people need advanced help and the community is solving the small bite-sized stuff? Of course, you've heard about statistics around retention and satisfaction. This is about churn rate, meaning people who show up and become inactive, which is different than retention, which is people who show up and stick around for a long time. Customer lifetime value speaks to how long somebody stays in your community and how much they spend over time as well. It's another really good opportunity to generate more revenue inside your community. And sentiment, of course, this is how they feel about your community and their perspective on being a member in that place. A highly valuable metric, a little difficult to just pick up out of an analytics dashboard, if you know what I mean. Then we've got business integration metrics. Business integration metrics talk about the bigger picture of why your community exists in the context of your business as a whole. You should have a strategic reason for your community existing that applies to your business in a larger way. But depending on the model of your business and the stage of business that you're at and the style of membership or community that you're creating, that integration may be unique and different, but there is an element to making sure that the purpose, time, energy, and investment you've made into your community is reflecting back into your business strategy as a whole. Part of this for communities may be, is your community generating new ideas for your business? That is really valuable if you're part of the reason you're using your community is to leverage the insights of your customers to create new offers. And if you're getting new ideas from your community, how many of those ideas are actually getting implemented? Are those new offers selling when you offer them to your community? Are your community members upselling or upgrading to additional programs by being part of your membership? It's all really valuable metrics to take into consideration if your community strategy is directly tied to improving and growing your business overall. Then we get into the mountain of metrics around marketing and sales, right? This is where we're talking about customer lifetime value again, community generated leads. If your community is free or has a low cost metric, but you're hoping that those people eventually become higher ticket customers, are leads coming from your community as a result of that community being in place? Is Are people becoming clients faster because they were in your community? That's the time to close. From a marketing perspective, does the community change perspective or perception of your brand? Are people more aware of your brand because of the community? Is your community creating user generated content? If you're not in the marketing world, you might not know that user generated content is really where the gold comes in, because another word for this might be influencers, but it's also people who feel passionate about what they have and what you offer and are sharing content they've created about your product with the world. It's a really important marketing metric if you're focused on how you're going to grow your audience using your members as well. Share of brand voices are kind of like nerdy marketing metrics, but they're definitely things to consider when we're talking about what it costs for you to acquire new members and to grow your membership, as well as how much you're spending to grow your audience versus how much you're actually getting by growing your audience. And then finally, we have something that we don't want to forget about, which is the user experience. And this is where we're really looking at your platform and the experience of your users in the technology experience. Like, is the navigation making sense? Are the aesthetics living up to your brand? Is the liveliness of your community and the experience when they show up something that you're proud of? And is the mobile experience on point, which cannot be understated? As you can see here, we have a boatload of different metrics and that we could look at, but my recommendation to you is not by any means to look at all of these. My recommendation again is for you to choose the metrics that take your strategy and put it into action. Your strategy is defined by your positioning statement. And when your positioning statement is clear, you can then choose the metrics that track your community strategy to prove whether or not your community is doing a good job and the metrics that will put it in place, right? Now, all of that to say, once you know what those metrics are that you're going to track, then it's about benchmarking where those numbers are and putting in activities and opportunities to nudge the numbers that matter and improve them over time. Obviously, metrics is a really deep subject that we could go into and dive really deeply into for a while. But let's just cut right to the chase. There are a few core activities that will always bend the quality of your community towards greatness, right? And so finding a way to see if these apply to you and implement them in the ways that make sense are opportunities that are just big pieces of fruit sitting there waiting for you to take advantage of. The first is member surveys. At the very least, this should happen on an annual basis where you send out a survey and request as many members in your community as possible give you tangible feedback about the community. Are they getting what they need from it? Are they finding that they want to stay? There's so many questions you can ask here, but at least once a year, you should be surveying your membership. I would say there's also the opportunity to survey them as they onboard. So you kind of get a benchmark of where they are, as well as survey them when they leave the community so that you understand the reasons and metrics behind their desires to leave. Once a year, if not twice a year, you should have surveys that help you understand some of the numbers that are on this chart here. We could talk about sentiment, sense of community, user engagement, what they like, how they're enjoying things. This is really self-reported from them, but it's really, really, truly, truly valuable. And The reason I find that most community members skimp on member surveys is often they don't know what to ask or they're a little afraid of what they're going to find out. And let me tell you that for the most part, this is a really fulfilling activity because you see what your members think that they may not be saying or posting in your community all the time. It also gives you the opportunity to get ideas, see things that aren't working, and solve them before they become bigger problems. And you may also find that there are lots of opportunities that you can leverage that will inevitably help your community grow that you wouldn't know if you weren't talking to your customers. You know me, I'm a customer research absolute nerd. And so I will always be encouraging you at every opportunity that you can to get it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say, what the information you need in order to improve your community. Doing member surveys will always improve the quality of your community because you will always have a clear understanding of what your members think, regardless of what analytics or engagement scores or growth metrics show you. The next one that's a really big one is getting new members to post when they first join. I haven't thrown in a whole lot of data and charts on this. One of the people that I follow pretty actively is someone named Richard Millington. He is a big time community strategist and he's deeply focused on data and analytics. His company is called Fever and you can go there and look at all kinds of charts and data and information. What I like to go and do with his content is understand the data and see what he's gathering from the large communities that he's working with. He tends to focus on corporate communities or like communities focused around customer support and things like that. So he's got a bit of a different focus, but he's really rigorous in posting data and studies. And that's where all of these recommendations come from. But one of the things that he found when he did studies around new members is that if they post either creating a new post on their own or tagging on to a welcome post. If they do that within the first few days of their membership, their likelihood to remain engaged and become a more active user goes up exponentially. Like it's just this crazy metric that when your members are encouraged, new members, to post when they join, if they do, they're on track to be a better, more engaged member than they would be if they didn't. One of those things. So if you're not encouraging new members to post or really calling in and inviting your new members as they join to post introduction threads or to leave a comment on a welcome thread, it's really an opportunity for you to incorporate that into your onboarding process and something for you to move the needle on that will always lend itself to better retention and better engagement. Next, we have the community manager. I cannot tell you the numbers in the world of engagement and satisfaction and general sense of community that a community manager can bring. We can dive into what a good community manager looks like and how they can benefit your community later. But the difference in engagement and quality of community is clearly impacted by the presence of a community manager. You add one to the community, your growth, your engagement, all of your numbers will go up. You have a community and you get rid of your community manager, all of those numbers will go down. It's just one of those really big mechanisms that makes a big difference in the health and quality of your community overall. If you're in the early stages of running your community and you don't have a budget for a community manager yet, it's important that you understand the role of a community manager and do your best to meet that need while you get your community to a stage at which financially it can support having a community manager. Ask, don't state. If you want people to engage with your content and you want to see threads that blow up with lots of responses or get lots of perspectives, you don't want to state information, you want to ask about it, right? And so if your post, and this is just one of those data things, if your post includes a question mark, it will get more engagement than if it includes a statement that has no engagement or interaction. People will scroll right past a statement and they will stop and engage way more with a question every time. Next, post responsiveness. When somebody comes to your community, they're probably in an active state of need, and getting a quick response bends the arc towards greatness every time. If it takes you more than, let's say, 36 hours to respond to a post, the likelihood that that person will come back, continue to engage in the community, stay active, goes down precipitously. This is just one of those things where if you're quick to respond to the people who post things inside of your community and you make sure that every post has a response, you will find that many of your metrics will continue to improve just based on that alone. I've talked quite a bit before about how you can reward super users. I mentioned this in regards to like the member feature. Creating a member feature when you wrote is essentially finding one unique way to reward the VIPs and MVPs inside of your community for really bringing the heat and contributing in a big way to your community. When you reward super users, your community gets better. Now, the surprising thing about rewarding super users is that they don't want money. Real talk. There's been studies and polls and quizzes, et cetera, et cetera. And when offered financial reward, super users were kind of like, meh. But when offered opportunities to share ideas, to be part of an inner circle, to have the opportunity to grow their own audiences inside of the community, additional privileges, there's so many ways that you can reward super users. And every time you do, your community continues to grow and evolve. Super users are an underrated and highly valuable part of a community. And it also translates to the big picture idea that your community is an organism that grows and continues to evolve on its own. And while you may be in the early stages of getting it started, more established communities know that your community can't be built on one personality or one person being in the community and doing all the work. It's too much and it's unsustainable. If something happens to that one person, they go through a life change, they get sick, they want to take some time off on the vacation. If that person leaves the ecosystem of the community, even for a short while, the quality and caliber of the community drops drastically. It's like chopping a tree off at the trunk, right? And so your job as a community creator is not to carry all of the responsibility. It is to identify and cultivate relationships with your super users, with your MVPs inside of your community and find ways to engage with them at an advanced level because you're spreading and delegating the responsibility of the health and connection of your community across multiple people inside of your community, not just you, which leads to way more sustainability and a more lucrative community. Finally, one of the biggest ways to keep your people engaged is to serve more of their needs. Now, what does this really mean? If you want people to show up more often, you have to satisfy more of their needs. What does that really mean? How do I know that needs? Okay, listen, we've talked about the value of your community based on your positioning. Now we're going to dive into how that need translates into content and impact. I'm going to show you this little matrix here that's the customer needs matrix. This contrasts somebody's needs versus their desires versus how they identify. It also draws a distinction between the product or the program that you offer, the journey that your person is experiencing as they become more adept in that experience, as well as, let's say, off topic but related experiences to adapting this lifestyle. So, most people find when they focus on, I have a problem and I need help, they can go to the community, ask a question, get an answer, and then they bounce. When content is oriented around need, I'm blocked by an obstacle. How do I do this? I have it. Oh, let me move me so you can see a little bit better. There we go. I have an off topic question that I need an answer to. People who are operating at this level inside of the community come, they ask the question, they get the answer that they need, and they dip. Great. We want your community to be a place where people feel like they can go and get help. But in the world of engagement and staying an engaged member and really providing value to your membership, this is a low bar to meet, right? We don't want people who just come, take what they want, and leave. We want people who also give back to the community and find ways to become advanced and more involved and actually transform and have massive impact in their life, right? So, this is where we can then look at the levels of desires. The difference between a need and a desire is like, I have a problem and I need help, but the desire really is that I want to feel competent. These are different activities and content, right? Versus somebody who's got an identity associated with the program or the product who says, I really want to feel part of a group of people who are great at this specific context, right? You can see what this looks like in the world of journey. So I might come in with my need and say, I'm blocked by a specific obstacle in my journey, but the people who are going to stay longer and engage more and consume more of the content and be a part of the program, et cetera, are coming to get something so that they can accomplish something, right? This is where like I help customers who want this so that they can achieve that. This is where our $1 million message usually stands and where your positioning often puts you as the individual inside of the community, but there's other levels of this and even more depth. Of course, there's like, I want to belong to the top group of people who are on this journey, right? That's a whole other level. If we're looking at like, let's say a fitness program, I want to lose more weight and I'm struggling with picking the right menu. Great. Menu content, problem solved, need is met, right? But if we're talking about, I want to lose weight so that I can enjoy more time with my kids and be full of energy, that's a different need, right? That person doesn't necessarily need a meal plan. They need more of an experience and support in the community that makes sense. They want to talk to people who can help pull back the veil on that. They want accountability in order to achieve their goals, right? We're dealing with like a different level of need all the way up to I actually would like to be a fitness coach just like this community. I want to be one of the amazing people who can deliver results like this. These are people who are great for certification programs, for super user programs, for creating their own accountability groups inside of your community to help other members be accountable, right? You can see the like sophistication and refinement here between the various needs based on whether it's a need, a desire, or associated with their identity. And then in lifestyle, this is where like somebody can come in with an off topic question that might be somewhat related. We'll use the fitness model again and say, like, I'd love to know what running shoes I should get, right? It's related. It's more of a lifestyle thing. It's not directly connected to fitness, but it is in a way so it fits, right? Then there is like, I want to balance A and B. This might be work life balance. This might be, I want to balance the difference between like being super fit and losing weight, but also getting to go out and have fun with my friends, right? This is where we're focused on lifestyle needs around the purpose and positioning of our community. And then this is where people often think that they're positioning their community by saying, I want to connect with others who are like me. But when shown in the most valuable features inside of the community, this is often one of the lowest rated. People want all of these other things first, not saying that they don't want this, but they want these solutions solved well before they are interested in just connecting with other people who are like them. And many community creators are focused on providing content specifically in this quadrant while ignoring some of the other more valuable opportunities and addressing their customers' needs. So, what did I say? You want people to show up more often, satisfy more of their needs. What does this look like in practice when we take it and we kind of apply it to content inside of our community? Let's take a little example here. I've reorganized the structure here so that the need, desire, and identities are at the top. And then some typical types of discussions, content, engagement opportunities, and engagement activities that would happen inside of a community. Let's use putting up a shelf as an example. The immediate need is I have a problem. So they come and they ask, I want to drill a hole to put up a shelf, but I don't know what drill bit to use. Post it, get an answer. Great. They go off and they drill the hole and put up the shelf. There's content that you can create around this for your business or for your community, like the ultimate guide to drill bits. There's the engagement call to action that helps them, oh, take this ultimate guide if you like it and share it with your friends. And then there's activities around drilling a hole and putting up a shelf where they get an Ask Me Anything session with drill expert, Mr. Shelf McShelfie. That's an official name, just so you know. And we can see what this looks like in the desire world, where actually it might be more than just putting up a shelf. It's maybe my biggest desire in putting up a shelf is that I want to create an organized room that looks good. And how can I get inspiration around that? What are some other tips that other people might suggest? Maybe we do something together as a community, as an activity to design or create a file folder that helps us look good and be organized, right? And then we're getting into the identity world where we want to be seen as somebody who is organized with things that look good. And so now we're kind of looking at like, oh, what are some of the creative interior designers in the world? What does the future look like for this particular context of this identity? An engagement of like vote for your favorite interior designer, have a live webinar with some of the world's top interior designers. The value of your community increases the more robust and cohesive your content is moving in this direction, right? Not just focusing on immediate needs, but also cultivating the things that they desire and creating a space for their identity to take place. This is kind of the like plot twist on metrics here, because as I mentioned, when it comes to moving your metrics in a direction that makes sense, these are the activities that always do well. And engagement, real talk, is a metric that doesn't really mean anything in the world of like real measurement. How would I say that? Here's what I can tell you as a standard measurement of engagement inside of a community. The rule is 90, 10, and 1, right? Yeah. 90% of your community members will learn, plain and simple. 10% of them will be engaged. 1% of them will be super users. You can do what you can to nudge those numbers. You should definitely be leveraging your super users to encourage the lurkers to be more engaged. But as a standard bar of operating procedures in statistics, that's kind of what community engagement looks like. And it shouldn't freak you out, because the more valuable information is getting member surveys, having an actual community manager in there, these things that will actually move the needle of improving the experience of your community, the retention, the perception of community, people wanting to come back more often. These are the things that actually change that, not engagement, right? Clicks, responses, comments, right? That's the measurement of engagement. And those actually don't mean nearly as much inside of your community as you would think. But as a rule, if you want people to show up more often, find a way to satisfy more of their needs. And you can use this needs matrix to help you explore what this might look like inside of your community. And then you can use this content matrix to put in examples that might make sense for the purpose and positioning of your community. All of this fails, all of it fails if you do not have community positioning that makes sense for you. So if you don't have this locked in a way that makes sense, like I said, don't pass go. Do not collect $200. Start here with locking in your positioning, and then focus on the metrics that actually track your strategy and that matter to your community. Yeah. I think that's it for today's live. I just wanted to pop in and share some insights with you. I hope that that was valuable, and I'll talk to you again soon. Ciao, everybody.